Hey, paisans, the time has come. On the air since 2009, the independently produced, non-FCC compliant champ of video game talk podcasting. Here comes Tiger Claw Radio. Here's your host, Critical Failure.
Welcome, everybody. It's time for Tiger Claw Radio. We haven't done this in quite a while, and my goodness, it feels good to be back. Several big things have happened while we were on hiatus. The big ones being the Xbox 360 shutdown for good, and the Resident Evil original PS1 trilogy made its way to GOG.com. Both pretty big things. Now, in the subsequent week or so, I recorded a couple of vancasts, so we're going to get to that. That's where the meat of the podcasting is. However, usually at the top of the show, we play a chiptune, something that I can pull off of the chiptune scene, something that's actually like what's going on right now. So I headed over to chipmusic.org. Chipmusic.org is a great site, but it doesn't turn over as fast like as it used to, as 8-Bit Collective did or something like that. Most of the chip music, it goes on Battle of the Bits. However, chipmusic.org is still a stop I go to, so I went there and I picked up the highest rated tracks that we could go through. It doesn't turn over fast enough to do this every week, but this week I got the highest rated off of that site, and we're going to take a listen. First track is from Aesthetic Void, and it's called No Plug Suit Required. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Tell you what, there's a reason I returned to chipmusic.org, even though it doesn't turn over as fast as it used to or other sites do. Heck of a good track. All right, boys and girls, let's go to the van. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. All right, we're van casting. We haven't done this in a while. It is 11:41 on Sunday afternoon. My dashboard reads that it's 79 degrees outside, but it feels a little hotter than that. I have the house to myself this week. My family has gone down to Colonial Williamsburg, and the in-laws had the idea, hey, why don't you take a week off? We'll take the kids. And sounds great. So it's just me in the house. My wife's down there too. And I've been playing some games, and I have the unique opportunity to catch up on some of the stuff that's going on while TCR has been in hiatus. So let's start with the Xbox 360's closure. Xbox 360 finally came to a close. I don't know the date, but it happened recently, like in the last couple of weeks. And you look at the dates for that machine, and that thing stayed live for almost 20 years. I think it was like 2005, something like that. Pretty close to the 20-year mark. I don't have the dates in front of me because I'm driving right now. But it stayed live for a really long time. And the Xbox 360, historically, that's a system I love to say bad things about, because the way, if you remember, if you were around at the time, the red ring of death was a prominent issue for the Xbox 360. Still is for people who use the legacy machines, still have them hanging around. They had machines that just broke, and they didn't fix it. They just, hey man, they break. What are you gonna do? So if you had one, there was always this lingering feeling that it was a time bomb, and eventually it would go off and just boom, and that'd be it. A lot of fun out of that machine. The Xbox Live indie scene, as well as the Xbox Live Arcade. A number of really good games came out of that. And it's a shame that my big gripe was that, at least with the Xbox Live indie games, you had to be connected to Xbox Live in order to play those. They sold indie games, little tiny indie games, for like $1 to $3 a piece. And you could get a bunch of them really quickly, and then if you weren't logged in, you couldn't play the ones that you bought and downloaded, which is, at the time, was something, I remember Hemrock in particular had a deep dive into those games for a while, and then was like, wait, they have to be online. Wow, that's a bummer. This is why it's a problem. Because you have a system that really went the distance in terms of longevity, almost 20 years, but it's still a problem when it goes offline. Because now those games are dead. And there's games on that Xbox Live indie scene that you couldn't play anywhere else. Now, I want to acknowledge the elephant in the room. If you actually played those games, there was also a lot of garbage. I mean, a lot. But, I'll give you, for instance, I can't remember what it was called, but do you remember the toy Simon from the 80s? It was a circular thing that you would hold, and it had 4 great big giant colored buttons on it, and it would go, and one of them would light up, and then you'd press it, and it would go, and 2 of them would light up, and you'd have to press them in order, and then it would go, and the idea was you'd have to remember the order, and eventually it just got too long and too complicated to memorize. I love Simon. I think Simon is one of the greatest toys of all time. Not the greatest, but if I did a top 10 greatest toys of all time, you better believe Simon was on there. So occasionally when I run across copycat toys, or I get into them, there was a copycat version of Simon that was released for Xbox Live indie games. I can't remember what it was called, but there was a little robot on the screen, and it was shaped like a controller, like an Xbox 360 controller. And it was divided up into 4 sections, the ABXY, and then the right stick, and then the left stick, and then the the D-pad. So you would do, it had the same, format as Simon, using the ABXY, and if the code got over 4 steps, then it would start incorporating the right D-pad, the right stick, and then if that got over 4 steps, it would start incorporating the left stick, and if that got over 4 steps, it would start incorporating the D-pad. That's a long code by that time. I played the bejesus out of that game. Sid, you're right. If you were looking at a document sheet, a game design sheet for that game, it would be the simplest thing in the world. Hey, we're going to remake Simon, but it's going to be a little cute robot that looks like the Xbox 360 controller. Well, that game's gone now. Just went up in smoke. So I like finding games that only existed in Xbox Live Indie or Xbox Live Arcade when they turn up other places. All right. Another thing that I remember, at the time I was frustrated, but I remember it fondly now. Minecraft. When Minecraft was in its, when I was in my peak interest in Minecraft, it didn't come to consoles for what seemed like a long time. The Xbox release was vastly delayed. And in the time we were waiting for it to come to Xbox, several copycat games came before it. Fortress Craft, Castle Craft, Craft, Blocky Craft, all these little block building games that didn't quite hit the mark. There wasn't ever one that was as good as Minecraft, which is silly because such a thing exists now, I'm pretty sure, several times over. But you'd get those games, like Castle Craft was one I played a good bit. Castle Craft and Fortress Craft both got a good bit of play. And I still enjoy, like, seeing those games pop up occasionally on Steam or something like that. The big difference is, when you released a game on Xbox Live Indie, there was a price cap. There were like 3 different price points you could pick. You could make it a 99-cent game, $2 game, $3 game. That was it. So you'll see those, 99-cent games, they'll get ported to Steam, and the Steam version would be a lot more expensive. When Castle Craft first came to Steam, it was $10, and I did not understand that at all. Now it's much cheaper because nobody plays Castlecraft. Why would you ever play Castlecraft? But it was just a little Minecraft clone that was stuck in creative mode that had vastly inferior world gen. Although the graphics at the time I thought were really nice. But because they released it on Steam, with the inflated price, that game is preserved, at least for now, past the death of the Xbox 360. So, congratulations to Microsoft for keeping that thing alive for nearly 20 years, but still, I think this is a good example of, the problem with a lot of the online console marketplaces. We see the same thing several years ago, I guess a lot of years ago now, when the Wii went down, people were talking about, there's Castlevania games on this system you can't get anywhere else. I don't know if that's still true. I think they might have been re-released somewhere, but it adds extra steps. And, these consoles should be made, in my opinion, if you're going to make a console and it's going to have a marketplace, which, by the way, is great. I'm a PC guy, but I totally understand now. I'm old enough that I can understand that people like different things or need different things. So if there's going to be a console, there's going to be a marketplace. At least make it so when you buy a game and you download a game, that game's going to work when the servers go down. The Wii, for all the things I hate that Nintendo does, at the very least, if you had a Wii and you bought a game on the Virtual Console and you downloaded it before the services went down, it will still work. We still have our Wii hooked up in my bedroom with 2 controllers connected to it, and those 2 controllers both have Pro controllers connected to them. And the reason why is so that my wife and I can play Pokemon Puzzle League. My wife is not what you would call a traditional gamer, but there's a little tiny handful of games that she likes that transcend whether, she likes anyway. And one of them is Tetris Attack and its clone games. Tetris Attack, Panel de Pon, all that kind of stuff. And Pokemon Puzzle League, that's what that is. That is Tetris Attack, but with a higher skill cap. We love that game. And because that still works, even though the Wii is technically dead, it is still very much alive in my house. That's something that Nintendo got right. So, that's the Xbox 360. To be honest, my Xbox 360, which I got from... I never bought an Xbox 360. The one I have, I got from Tony Stemmen, from formerly of Classic Elite. He got himself a free Xbox from, I think it was IGN or something. One of the big games press companies had some sort of giveaway, and he got a fresh one. He was like, hey man, you can have my old one. And that's how I got my Xbox. And it's still, as far as I know, it still ticks. And I had a good bit of fun with it, man. I mean, I hated on Xbox a lot, but that was also my introduction to the Saints Row franchise. You know, I can't remember if I bought it or if it was on a giveaway, but I got a hold of Saints Row 2 somehow for the Xbox 360, and that was a bunch of late nights. And I still love me some Saints Row 2. That's a game that we'll never get again, is Saints Row 2. So yeah, that's the Xbox 360. Another one laid to rest. One can only hope with the Xbox systems that are out now that they will stay online as long as the 360 did. All right, I'm gonna break right now because, well, I guess I got about a couple more minutes. I drove to Play More Games, which is a game store, like an LGS, like a tabletop game store here in town, and they open at 12, and it is now 11:53. So I'm just chilling, and I'm gonna go in there and look at some stuff. Yeah, so I will see you when I'm done. Welcome back to the studio. We are nearing the 20-minute mark. TCR is, in fact, a Patreon-sponsored program. We, as an old tradition, we like to read the names off as sort of a hall of distinguished gentlemen. And they are Tecmo Balls, Darabka, and Sendu of Light Studios, EmeraldRangers.com. And these guys, I can't believe they're still with us, but they are they are the life's blood. So all the thanks in the world to you guys. And with that, let's return to chipmusic.org, and we'll see what's next. So this one's called Jacket the Cat 2023, and it's from Cat Nose. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. back again in the studio. We got one more trip to the van. Let's go there now. There we go. We're recording now. Yeah, we're back in the van. Just left the game store. Got some GURPS books. Old role-playing stuff. Here's another thing that happened that blew my mind in the gaming world a little while back. And this happened while I was on vacation. I took my family to Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. And we were relaxing in the room after a beach day. I got on my phone, and apparently the original Resident Evil trilogy made it to GOG.com. $10 a piece, $25 for the trilogy, and 2 and 3 haven't actually been released. Like, they're coming in the next month or so. That was an easy $25 for me. I picked that up without a second thought, and I've since got home. I reinstalled the GOG client, which I haven't done in a while, and I sat down with the original Resident Evil, tank controls and all, on the PC. And if you're not familiar, these were games, at least the first two, I have to think the third one as well, but they actually had native PC releases, decades and decades ago. When I was 17, I had a large collection of big box games, and my mom, threw them out at some point. She was really upset. Whatever that led us to that point. All of those games got thrown out, and it just broke my heart, man. And among them was Resident Evil 2 for Windows 95 and Windows 98. And one thing that stuck in my mind about that, I bought that game, but I remember I only really sat down with it a couple of times, right? Like PC games backlogging was already a thing for me, collecting big box games. But anyway, I think I was playing Quake at the time, Quake and Unreal Tournament and stuff like that. But anyway, I sat down with Resident Evil 2 once or twice, and what I remember is that the door zoom in sequence that happened every time you would switch rooms, you could actually skip that. Because, if you remember, that was how the PlayStation hid its loading screens in the original Resident Evil games. And if you're playing on a PC, it can load a lot faster, so you can just hit the button and skip those. I remember that very, very well. I thought it was really cool. So, returning to those games, with the GOG release, that's still a thing. And my goodness, does it ever make Resident Evil 1,000% more playable. You can jet through that entire mansion very, very quickly. Now, I haven't seen the numbers, but I heard, I was talking to Alex Swingle, good friend, and he was telling me that since that's been re-released, speedrunners have been able to knock 15 minutes off of their runs just because there's no more camera zoom in. So that is just absolutely amazing. A couple of weird quirks about the PC release. The two games that you can pick through, you can play Chris or Jill, and most people will tell you, if you play the original Resident Evil, Chris is the more action-oriented run-through, and Jill is the more puzzle-oriented run-through. A little bit lighter on the action, but both characters have both of those things. That's like the stereotypical way of looking at the two characters that you can choose. Well, in this version, they actually tilted the scales a little bit, so Jill is actually the easy run. And you can see that primarily in the use of ink ribbons, right? In all those old Resident Evil games, they controlled how many times you could save because you had to find an ink ribbon and then use it on a typewriter, and then the ink ribbon would go away, thus severely limiting how many times you could save. Well, if you play as Jill, at least in the first playthrough, you don't need ink ribbons. You can save as many times as you want. So yeah, so that's what I did, because I'm bad at those games. I love them to death, but I'm no good at them. So I started playing through as Jill, and I just had a merry time. Oh my goodness. I didn't beat the game, but I got further than I had ever gotten. I got, you get through the mansion the first time, into the guardhouse, and then you beat the thing in the guardhouse, and then the mansion gets filled with hunters, and then you go into the lab, and then you go into like these caverns. And that's as far as I got, was into the caverns. And I got lost looking for where to go next. And I think the next thing is like a huge spider, like a really, really big spider that you meet in the caverns. And I got so lost looking for this spider that I used a lot of my ammo on the hunters. And so by the time I got there, I felt like I didn't have enough resources to actually beat the boss. So I have to play through the game again. And that was when I put it down for a little while. And then while I put it down, they patched Resident Evil 1 on GOG. And the patch made the game harder, right? People who've played through original Resident Evil will tell you that the hunters that you meet later in the game, they have a one-shot kill. They weren't doing that when I was playing. They weren't executing the one-shot kill. I thought it was just because Jill easy mode, but whatever. I reloaded the game once after they patched it, and they started executing that one-hit kill like super quick. And I was like, oh yeah, this is a lot harder. It's supposed to be a lot harder than it was when I was playing it before. Oopsie daisy. So that's a game that's giving me everything that I wanted out of buying the original Resident Evil. So that's been a good time. So what I'm really waiting for is Resident Evil 2 to come out. I've pre-purchased it, I guess, which is something I never do, and I preach quite often that you shouldn't pre-purchase things, but I did it. I pre-purchased the original Resident Evil 2 and the original Resident Evil 3, and I'm happy as a clam that I'm going to have, for the most part, the actual complete Resident Evil collection on PC, with a few spin-off exceptions. I don't think it's possible to have Survivor, on PC without some emulation, that sort of thing, but yeah, happy as a clam. They did a really good job getting that thing running. Also, I'll say this about the original Resident Evil. For whatever reason, the PC version, all of the sound files for the little cutscenes, I'm not talking about the FMV, but the in-game cutscenes, the sound files are just unprotected WAV files. So if you have this thing, you can go into the directory, the game directory, and you can get yourself Jill Sandwich, master of unlocking all the cheesy sound files you'd ever want, isolated from in-game music. It's beautiful. All right. I am going to send you guys back to the studio while I run into the grocery store and get some chips. I'll see you back there.
Welcome back to the studio. We're going to do another chip tune from chipmusic.org. All right, what do we got here? I have the track all laid out, but it's not tagged properly. So let's see if I can credit them. Let me stretch this out. Firebrand Boy Spring. And I believe the name of the track is Republic. And you can get this MP3 off of chipmusic.org. Heck of a good track. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio.
Did you know that TCR can be found on an Alexa device? I discovered this recently. It's not listed as TCR, it's listed as the Emerald Rangers Podcast Network. So, you can just ask your Echo device or whatever it is to play the Emerald Rangers Podcast Network, and there you go. You'll get me, along with the Beastcast whenever an episode of that is released, and whatever else we can come up with. So, big thanks to Emerald Rangers for keeping the show on the air, and my goodness, sticking with us throughout hiatus, which is incredible. So I don't have a fail bag because of the elapsed time, and the last episode of the podcast actually never made it to YouTube. I honestly would have to look up the number, but it did make it to Emerald Rangers. So I think what I'm going to have to do is I'll get that together, get that on YouTube, and then this will be on YouTube the following week. So let's talk about some video games. A couple of things we've been into. My son approached me, my oldest boy, was interested in playing Celeste, which I'm not a platforming guy, really. Not, and when it comes to newer games, I say newer, it's game's almost 10 years old now. But because he's my son and I love him, bought the game, and I gotta say, it's really good. My son is far superior in terms of platforming skill. He beat the goodness out of that game. That's a game where you play it to the end, and then there's a lot of post-game content that's extremely hard that he's playing through. And I gave it a shot myself. I'm about, like an hour in or so. There's a lot of wall jumping, double jumping, very fluid controls. The environments are really cool. There's like I said, I'm about an hour in, and they're still spoon feeding in new mechanics, like these gel blocks that you push through and stuff like that. Neat little game, and a surprisingly large and active mod scene. There's like 1,000 different mods you can play, and there were 2 in particular that were like community projects that had 100+ developers that made different levels and stuff. Which I think is really cool. And the custom levels can have custom graphics and custom mechanics and stuff. So it's not just like you're playing the same level over and over again, but rearranged. It's it's a pretty wide scope in that game. So that's Celeste. If you like platforming, that's an oldie. I can't remember what I paid for it, like $5 or something, but not a lot. Especially if you want to hold out for the next sale. So that was the big one on Steam. Apart from that, it's been a lot of playing games just randomly for short periods of time. Another one that stuck was a game called Planet Crafter, which I got during the big Steam sale over the summer. I think I was on vacation while that happened. And that's a game it's like an open world crafting survival thing, but there's no monsters. It's just that the environment is really harsh. Like, you can run out of oxygen, you gotta find a way to get food, you gotta find a way to get water. And I think it balances the line between being much more chilled out than other games because there's no monsters, and also like made the planet hostile enough to keep it interesting. So that's Planet Crafter. I just passed 25 and a half hours, which, I don't usually stick with games that long. So that's very enjoyable. I like that kind of game, though, so I think it appeals to me. I'm not sure how much crossover appeal it has. I will say that the other big ones in that genre, like Rust and The Forest, those games are so much more hostile, I guess. They're so much more like monster based and action based and like Twitch reaction skill based, and Planet Crafter really isn't, and I think that is really awesome. Just running around trying to find ore and building machines and building bases and stuff. It's a good game. So that's Planet Crafter. Let me take a look back at the oh yeah, here's another one for you. Half-Life. So this is one of the earliest games I ever bought on Steam, which was 14 years ago. My goodness. Half-Life's a game that's been with me for a long time. I bought Half-Life, the big box. I think I talked about this in one of the Vancasts. But anyway, I'm trying to beat Half-Life. I've never beat it, even after all this time. And I beat, what's the one where you're the cop? Hold on, I gotta look this up now. Half-Life, Blue Shift. I beat Blue Shift, which I never beat, and it's been in my library for years. That was an amazing feeling. I started playing Opposing Force again, but there's a place like right at the beginning I couldn't get past. Half-Life. I'm almost at the end of Half-Life. I went to the Zen area, and I fought a boss there, and there's one area that I'm kind of stuck at where you have to jump on like a monster and ride it to the area you're supposed to go to. Anytime a first-person shooter has platforming elements, that's always an awful experience. So, and this is a game I really like. I really do like Half-Life, but this one part has been frustrating to the point where it's been over a week now since I played it. But it was really cool to get further than I've ever gotten before. So, I think in the wake of that, I played a little bit more Half-Life Deathmatch Classic, which used to be one of those like go-to games that we'd play like in my circle of friends. But yeah, we're talking about like some of the oldest games that I have in my Steam collection. When I first launched my Steam account and set it all up, I didn't have a lot of money for games, and I had heard that if you had a CD version of Half-Life and you put in the CD key, it would unlock. And sure enough, that's exactly what I did, which was ridiculous because I had just bought Counter-Strike, like what we know as Counter-Strike 1.6. And when I did that, it unlocked all of the related Half-Life mods. That means Counter-Strike. That means Day of Defeat. That means what was the one that was supposed to be like Tron? That was like platforming. I can't think of what it was called. But anyway. Like, I had just bought Counter-Strike, and then it unlocked Counter-Strike for free. So it's like, oh well. But, yeah. It's been fun to go back and play these games again. It makes me feel a lot more like when Steam was like a brand new thing for me. And they don't have a ton of hours in them either. Let me look at Half-Life. The original Half-Life in my collection is 14.7 hours. That's it. It's kind of funny when you think about it in terms of like its CD-ROM days, because if you were playing Half-Life on like Windows 98, it also had like an inbuilt mod manager. A lot of the mods that we know of that you can play in separate executables now, you would load Half-Life and then you would play like They Hunger was a big one for me, right out of the executable. So in my mind, when I look back on the old days, I think of Half-Life as a game I have hundreds of hours in. The reality is, when I had Half-Life, on CD-ROM, I barely played the vanilla Half-Life. I played it some, don't get me wrong, but I certainly didn't play it to the end, or even close to the end.
before I discovered, the other stuff you could do with it. And I was like, all right, that's what I want to play, man. That was when Counter-Strike was, before they were calling it Counter-Strike 1.6, and it probably had some other number. Those were really good times, man. And I think of all that as time in Half-Life. All of this stuff was just one game. I distinctly remember feeling that Half-Life was the best purchase you could make when you'd have to walk to the store and buy a physical game, because that was one game that you'd buy, and you'd have all this other stuff you could do with it. I remember my copy of Half-Life came with. It was before Opposing Forces came out, but it came packaged in with Team Fortress Classic. And I think there was something else as well, but Team Fortress Classic, I remember being surprised about that one, because when I bought that was like at the peak of me playing Team Fortress on Quake, like all the time. And I remember playing the Team Fortress Classic off the CD-ROM, and I played it like once or twice, but I wasn't super, super impressed at the time. I was still like, the Quake version, man. Faster paced. More people were playing it at the time. That was where it was at. So this isn't just about beating Half-Life. Do you know what I mean? It kind of is, but it's also about returning to those early days of Steam. And when QuakeCon, the first QuakeCon came around when I was a Steam member, and I had my first taste of like what a real Steam sale could do. And I remember it was like $12, and it was the entire like Quake collection. And that did not include like Quake 4. I don't know if Quake 4 was out already or not, but just the fact that I had Quake 2, and Quake 3, and like their respective expansions it blew my mind. There was a period of time where my Steam collection only consisted of those Quake games, and then the Half-Life games, and then also Magic the Gathering Duels of the Planeswalkers, which I could not play because at the time my computer was not fast enough to play it. I was playing off a laptop, like an old inherited laptop that I was using to write like college papers on. So the final thing I can say about this is that Half-Life apparently still holds up very, very well. Sometime in recent past, I'm looking at the updates. At the end of 2023, November 2023, there was a big 25th anniversary update for Half-Life. So they made it look and work better on modern machines. I would not call it a remaster. So it's not the same thing that Quake went through. When they remastered and they gave it new netcode and all that stuff. No, it was an update. They added something called, I think it was called Half-Life Uplink, which was a demo of the game, a demo version. And I played through that, and it was amazing. And there's a new pack of deathmatch maps and other stuff. So if you remember Half-Life fondly, this is a great time to revisit it. If you've never played it, it is a really legitimately good game that holds up very, very well. So that's Half-Life. Okay, here's another one that happened long enough ago. I can't remember if we talked about it on the podcast or not, so bear with me. Game Boys. Game Boy Color. All right, I love the Game Boy Color. Years ago, my buddy Engie and I, we discovered that you could get Game Boy games, authentic ones, very, very cheaply by buying large lots. I'm sure this is still true to some degree, but when I say large lots, I'm talking like $20, and you would get like a bunch of stuff. And so at the time, we were coming across like a bunch of doubles that we would like pass back and forth. And I got a hold of a bunch of weird games that way, like the Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen horse racing game. You ever ask yourself, how on earth did you come across this? Well, that was how. I think NG bought a bundle of games, and he was like, here, I don't need this. Well, he also gave me 2 separate Game Boy Colors doing this. One is the classic Atomic Purple Game Boy Color, which I've had since then. And these events I'm talking about were probably like 15 years ago or more. And the other one is like a not Atomic Purple, but straight solid purple, which was in not as great a condition, but still worked pretty well.
And I wanted that solid purple one. I wanted it up to snuff. So I actually went through reshelling it. If you go over to Amazon and you look at Game Boy Color parts, you can see that for $10 to $20, you can get a complete Game Boy reskinning kit. The shell, the buttons, the membranes, power switch, the little infrared screen, all that stuff. The only thing that it needs a motherboard, and it needs the screen unit. I don't know what else to call it. The actual screen, not the glass sticker piece, but the LCD component. So I bought that thing, and I got my little tiny screwdrivers and my little tiny tri-tip screwdriver that the Game Boy needs for the security screws. Opened up the old Game Boy. This is after watching a couple YouTube videos. Pulled out all the components, put it in the new kit that I bought, which was translucent pink for my daughter. My goodness, it worked beautifully. It worked beautifully. Like, I could not believe how well it came out in the end. It took a while. It took some work, but it was great. And what's funny is when I was looking inside the shell of the old Game Boy, there was sand in it. Like somebody had taken it to the beach, and sand had gotten inside the unit and stuck to the reverse end of the sticker that holds the screen on. So that was kind of funny. But it worked so well that I got on AliExpress, and I ordered an official Game Boy Color motherboard, but just the motherboard. And the only thing I was missing was a screen. And then I ordered a screen, and the screen showed up. And then that project kind of stopped in its tracks. I really wanted to create a Game Boy Color, like from scratch almost. But the screen that they sent me, I suspect, is a Game Boy Pocket screen, because it doesn't fit the same way the other one does. And I was just like, ugh. And then that project kind of got shelved. But we played Pokemon Bronze quite a bit, which is a fantastic game. If you're not familiar with Pokemon Bronze, it is a ROM hack total conversion of Pokemon Gold. It is a very, very good game. And if you have not done much with Pokemon ROM hacks, that's one that provides a really good single-player experience. I've played a lot of Pokemon Crystal Clear, which is like the sandboxy one, which is great for battling each other. But Pokemon Bronze, they made a nice narrative and nice new regions you can explore and stuff. So I got on AliExpress. I got 2 of those carts, and then they showed up, and yeah, we had a good old time. So Game Boy Color is still a worthwhile system. So eventually I will try again with buying another screen, and I'll get another kit, and we'll try again making. I don't even need another Game Boy Color. That's part of the reason that project got shelved. But ideally, I've got mine, and my daughter has hers. Make one for my oldest son, so we could really see who's the very best, like no one ever was. It'd also be fun to play F1. I think it's F1. I can't remember exactly the name of it, but the F1 race game for the Game Boy, the original Game Boy that had the 4-player adapter. That would be fun. But these are old man dreams. My kids are starting to get a little older, especially the older one. He's less interested these days in checking out what dad's interested in, and more interested in playing his own kind of games. Which, to his credit, plays cool games. He's not a Fortnite guy, none of that stuff. But he's, as it turns out, he's grown into a big platformer dude. So that's cool. Well, you know what that sound means. My God, it's good to be back. Thank you guys so much for listening to TCR and for hanging out, talking about some games, listening to some chip tunes, and doing our thing. And whatever it is you got ahead of you, by God, I hope it goes well. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you next week.